I long to hear you. Away, you rolling river, ocean and down, I long to hear you. I'm bound away across the wide Missouri. Oh, Shenandoah, I hear you calling. Far away, I hear you calling. Away, I'm bound away across the wide Missouri. 'Tis 7 long years since last I've seen you. Away, you rolling river. 'Tis 7 long years since last I've seen you. Away, I'm bound away across the wide Missouri. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you. Away, I'm bound away across the wide Missouri, the wide Missouri.
Okay, by request, I would like to talk about or ask the question, have we met? It's a subject I don't know a whole lot about, but I have some ideas. I probably know as much as anybody about it, about this idea of do we hook up with people that we have known in past lives? And I think it's an interesting question. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, to tell you the truth. I used to, because I thought it was important, but I've kind of gotten to the point where it doesn't matter how we, I guess, know people. If you feel compatible with somebody, you know, maybe it's a past life, maybe not. But it doesn't matter if you feel compatible with them. That's what's important, is the relationship as it unfolds today. But the question does, it gives us a broader perspective of life, and I think that's really what we want to get at, is that this experience we're having here on Earth, and just think of this whole COVID thing, this thing we're going through now. You know, this is like in a sense, like a lifetime. Somebody said on Facebook the other day, or posted something that said that they didn't need to celebrate Halloween. They've been wearing a mask and eating candy for the last 2 or 3 months. So it's kind of, you know, defeats the purpose now. But this is a moment that we'll all look back on. You know, if we survive, of course. We'll look back on it and we'll see it as kind of a blip, but it was like a little bit of a lifetime. But you think about all of the different periods in your life, your experience. We've had a number of churches, and I have related that. Each church that we have served has been like an incarnation. And you meet a whole group of people, within that. We've been at this church longer than any, 17 years. Will be 18 years next June, which I think is the tie. We'll tie Dan Kellerstrass when we reach that point. So the day after June 3rd, we'll be holding the record. So of this place. But I tell you, we have seen some major changes in this church. We've seen some big changes in this lifetime. We've seen people come and go. We've seen them die. We've seen them get angry and leave. We've seen them move away, come and go for a lot of reasons. And isn't that really the way life is? People come and go in your life. But what brought them here? What brought us together in this place? If I was a priest, if I was a minister of a more traditional Christian church, none of us would have met, because our interest would not draw us to this place. And that, to me, is the thing that we look at. The interest is what draws us. That's what makes us compatible. I was sitting in the seat, one of the seats at Unity Village Chapel, and they averaged probably 1,000 people on Sunday morning. That's our world headquarters, or was. It's kind of confusing, but it is the headquarters. So I used to drive to there every Sunday morning, and sometimes Wednesdays, sometimes other nights from where I lived, and because I was totally interested in the message of that place, what they were teaching, because I had discovered the book Lessons in Truth and discovered that these places were connected. The book and the Unity Village were connected. So I began to attend. And one day I was sitting there minding my own business, and this young, good-looking lady sat down a seat away from me. And the fact that we were both in the same room would indicate that we had similar interests. We're drawn by our interests. If I had, again, been attending a Catholic Mass or some other more traditional thing, I would not have met this young lady. And so we were singing a song using the hymnals, just exactly like the one you see sitting in front of you. And there were two ladies to my right, older ladies, not near as good looking. And one of them handed her hymnal to somebody else, so she didn't have one, so I gave her mine, and the young lady on my left moved over and shared hers with mine. So that's the power of giving. You give away your hymnal and no telling. It changed your whole life. But that beautiful young lady was Beth. And I knew pretty quickly that she was the person that I would like to share my life with. I didn't see her the following Sunday, but I did the Sunday after that, and I knew for sure she was the one. It took her about a year to figure it out. But I can't imagine why. I mean, what's there not to like? It's like. But I used to ask my mother, how will you know, when you meet the person that you're probably going to marry? And she said, you'll just know. And so I just knew. It was like there was a compatibility there. And I've wondered several times since if we had known each other in some past capacity, some past life. Because what happened to me, which I think it's called falling in love, had never happened before that meeting. So it was something different. So in that sense, I think there is a lot to this. I think we probably did share something of a past life. I dedicated my novel to her and used one of the quotes from a song of mine. You and I have walked before together on some distant shore. And I think that we probably did. But the thing is, whether you know that or think that or not, it doesn't really matter. How many of you think that you have encountered people that you've known in past lives? Do you mind sharing that? Several of you. So I think just based on that, alone is enough to keep your mind open to the whole thing. But also the common interest. Why would we share common interests? I could be talking here in front of, say, 99 people had never heard any of this unity stuff before. But say one of you shows up, you're part of that 99, and you would recognize what I was saying, where the 99 may not have a clue. And that's always kind of been interesting to me, because when I discovered unity, I thought it was so logical that everybody would get it. And as I handed out the book Lessons in Truth to people, they rejected it. It just didn't resonate with them at all. And you can tell when somebody is trying to use their whole intellect to figure out, what these ideas are and where do they fit into my belief in the Trinity, or Jesus, died on the cross and all this stuff. Where does all this fit in? There's this intellectual thing that trying to put the round piece in the square hole, and it doesn't add up. And so we say, I don't believe that. But the person that gets it hears it. They do get it. They don't have to have it explained to them. And that was my experience when I read that book. Something in me resonated with that. And so I've wondered, was I in unity before? Was I in this type of teaching before? I probably was. I don't know if it was unity specifically. But this teaching appealed to me, though I had had no experience with it prior to the time I picked up that book. Not to that degree. But how would you know or feel something's true that you have no proof of? There's no evidence that it's true. It goes against, in fact, almost everything that you've been taught. I told you, I gave the book to my minister, my Baptist minister. He says, the work of the devil. Well, I knew it wasn't the work of the devil. When I would think of Emily Cady, that would be the last person on earth I would think of as a devil, or even an agent of the devil. Something in me knew that there's something deeper. And is that the result of past experience? Some would say that's the evolution of the soul. Your soul has gotten to the point where it's ready to be open to these ideas. I think rather than evolution, it's more elimination. You eliminate ideas that don't work. People get to the end of the rope in faith. Life takes them into some corner that just totally backs them up, and everything they have been taught fails. It doesn't help them. It doesn't satisfy them. And so many people just reject religion. They just reject God. They reject the whole thing because it didn't help them through that crisis, didn't help them through that tragedy. And so that person actually is a prime candidate for some new ideas. Maybe not the same day, maybe not right at that moment. I talked to a woman who had a daily word in her dresser drawer for 23 years before she read it. No wonder they're having financial issues. But can you imagine that? This thing just sits in the drawer for 23 years, and one day she picks it up and all the lights came on. She was ready for it. But rather than evolving to it, it's like striking off what doesn't work, clearing away what doesn't work. I think I shared with you a study on psychedelic drugs. What they discover the impact or the effect that they have is they don't open up a part of the brain, they shut it down so the person can experience. It's like opening a window, opening a door that's been blocking this deeper level of experience. And the scientists that are studying that, I can't remember where that study is going on, but it's pretty well known. But it is a surprise because they thought it was triggering some part of the brain, you know, that was having all these, but it's shutting it down. Shuts down the brain so the person can experience this deeper reality. And that is a genuine aspect of psychedelics. And it's not, I'm not promoting that by any means. But that's why it's been part of some very ancient cultures, because it shuts down enough of the brain. And you know that part it shuts down is that when you sit down to meditate, the hamster starts running, you know. It shuts that down and allows something greater to come through. So there's a legitimate aspect to that. The trouble with it is it's temporary. And what we want to do is be able to get into that space naturally without the help or use of some drug that could be dangerous to us or could be harmful in some way. But that is, I found that very interesting, and so did the scientists that were doing the studies, and so does the area of near-death research. You know, they took note of that aspect of it because that explains a lot of what happens when a person leaves their body in a near-death experience. I had a friend that was had developed cancer, and it would go into remission, then it'd come back and go into remission, kept doing that. But the last go-round, he was in a lot of pain toward the end, and he said he was in the fetal position on the bed, just really struggling. And he said the next moment he was free of pain, and he was actually looking down from the ceiling on his body in the fetal position. And he said it just lasted for a few moments, but he said it was just as real as anything he'd ever experienced. And he asked me, he said, which one of those was me? He said, I was obviously on the bed, but there was something looking down. And I said, well, I would put my money on the one doing the looking, you know, the one looking down. But that's a common experience with people that have out-of-body or near-death experiences. So the brain is shut down in that time. It's not, obviously not totally shut down, but the brain's not floating around on the ceiling, looking down. But here you have the ability to see, the ability to think, and what's really interesting is the ability to remember it. Where's that memory stored? It can't be in the brain down there. But there's, you know, this is kind of the ongoing thing, and you're either going to believe that or not. It doesn't matter. But I do believe it, because why would we be attached to this thing permanently? You know, why would this be a part of it? And the mystics all say there is a grander level of experience, but the brain or our daily concerns with the body are shutting that down. And maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know what it is exactly. I think if we were having this experience of God, I think the Sufis have a term, they call it a mast or a maced, M-A-S-T, it's spelled mast, but I think it's pronounced mace, but it's a person who is intoxicated with God. And that is, they're so tuned in they can't really function on this planet. They're having such a high level of experience all the time that they can't really function. And there was a psychologist, I think it was back in the 1800s, that made a point to travel around and find these spiritually intoxicated souls and try to bring them down to reality, and not the reality, but to earth experience, so they could actually function on this planet. So that might be the reason that we're so dumbed down, you know, spiritually and even intellectually, is that maybe the brain plays that role so we can live a linear life here. We can make choices, and, you know, we're not just drunk on God all the time. Because the closest experience I've ever had to that was one where if I was in that state of mind all the time, I wouldn't function because I wouldn't care about anything. I didn't care about my body. I didn't care about anything around me. I didn't care about any of my dreams or my goals, anything. The only thing I cared about was having more of that spiritual intoxication. And it was a profound thing. And if I was in that state of mind all the time, I could see how I could not function well. But then it makes no sense to shut it all down, become dysfunctional, spiritually dysfunctional basically, and struggle through life. That doesn't make sense either. So there's a balance. We're looking for a balance of some kind. Maybe I should talk about what I came here to talk about today. Okay, when Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice," those who naturally and deeply resonate with Jesus' message did so at a soul level. That's why you respond to this kind of message. And it's not that we're a bunch of sheep. Those who were beginning to awaken to the truth of their being would hear and respond to his message. And the reason I think he used this illustration is because they say that shepherds would come into a village, where there was a watering hole, and they would all bring their sheep in, and maybe I'm a shepherd and I have 20 or 30 head of sheep, and somebody else comes in, they have the same number. There's 4 or 5 shepherds there with all these sheep. But the sheep would, when it was time to go, the shepherd would give a signal, would call his own sheep, and they would recognize his voice, and just that flock would come out. That's what I have read, and that makes sense to me. But what Jesus, I think, is saying is those who resonate with the level of teaching that I'm giving here will get it. You have been born of something else. You have a deeper understanding. Maybe you are tired of listening to all the religious professionals and doing all the things they say, and it just seems like a big political business, that takes you nowhere spiritually. And you've had this awakening, and you are beginning to realize there's something more to this whole spiritual thing than just reading scriptures or hearing people read them and doing the 600 things you're supposed to do every day to remain in good standing. Maybe there's something deeper than that. And this guy, Jesus, who's been through that whole gamut, comes out and says, there is more to it. And those of you that have been saturated with the professional religious approach will hear what I say. You'll understand it. And we all get that. Because again, there could be 99 traditional Christians in here that would not understand a word that I'm saying even now. And there could be one of you here that would get it. And we understand what that means, how that works. To be born of the flesh, to be born of the Spirit. That's really what it comes down to. And there's so many illustrations that Jesus gives where he makes this distinction. There's 2 kinds of consciousness. One's based on the body and all of our worldly things that we're involved in, which is necessary. If we have a body, if we want to be on this planet, we have to have a body, and we have needs and all that. But then when that becomes our reality, that's where the problem sets in, and then our religion becomes something outside of us. Whereas our life really is our religion. Our spiritual awakening, that's our religion. That's our... we are after a first-hand experience with God. We're on our own path. You don't join a religious group and get it. Jesus even said you can't search the scripture and get it. You search it because you think it bears witness to me, and it does. It talks about eternal life, but it's not eternal life. You can't have that unless you awaken to it. It becomes a real organic experience for you. And then you get it. And that's what he's saying, my sheep hear my voice. He's not calling people sheep in the sense that we normally think of, I'm a blind follower, I'll follow you any place. It's not what it is at all. It's like what I'm saying, there's going to be those who resonate with it, and there are those who won't get it at all. And you'll notice, at least according to the Bible, according to the Gospels, it was the religious professionals that didn't get it. Because they're so intellectually tuned in to theology, theological ideas. How many angels can dance on the head of a pin? You know, that's what we're trying to figure out. That's what's important to us. But it's not important to us when we begin to understand the kingdom of God is within us. It's our spiritual essence. The Son of Man, the Son of God. That's us. That's our spiritual identity. And Jesus, I don't think, claimed he was unique in that regard. The gospel writers claimed it. And we've got to make the distinction between those two messages. There's the gospel according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There's the gospel according to Jesus. And we've got to be able to sort that out. So do souls travel in groups? How many of you think that we do? I think we do. But do you think we've all met before? Because we're in something similar in terms of our spiritual. I don't think we necessarily have. But we're certainly on the same wavelength in many ways. You know, we're not all alike, are we? But there's something that draws us, something that's common to all of us. Why do we have that? And I'm not saying why do we have that in a way that, you know, we're looking down our nose at everybody else. But there's a reason for it. There's a reason why everybody gravitates to whatever it is they've gravitated to. But something like unity is not easy, because you don't just have to profess your belief in something to make it mean something. We are actually responding to something we have felt was missing. And somehow we're hearing that what I think I'm missing could be being talked about in this particular kind of thing. You know, you pick up a book and you resonate with it because it means something at a deeper level. So I think if we're compatible, whether we've met or not, whether our souls have crossed paths or not, to me that's not the big question, but I certainly could accept that it happens, you know, that it does happen. Charles Fillmore thought that the people that were drawn to unity were the followers of Jesus. He believed that. He totally believed that they were the reincarnated followers of the early Jesus movement. And I don't know. You know, I mean, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Again, we're drawn to the things that are important to us, and that's what matters. We find those things that are important to us. You know, I've told you I like taking pictures of birds and carrying, you know, a 7-pound camera around, photographing birds. You tend to run into other people that are interested in birds. Sometimes I'll take a picture of something, I don't know what it is, and I'll see somebody with some binoculars out there, and I'll know they're a birder. You get where you can just, you know, bird, nerd, those words kind of go together. You kind of get where you can spot them. But so I'll show the picture from on the back of my camera and say, do you know what this is? And a lot of times they'll tell me, but there's a compatibility of interest there, but I don't think I'm going to reincarnate just because I want to be with a bunch of birders. I don't think so. To me, it runs deeper than that. The spiritual thing is what would draw us together, because, you know, we're asking, our soul is saying, I want to be free. I want to know how to experience freedom here. And so asking that question, whether we're literally asking ourselves that, when we hear something that strikes a note with us, we know it. My sheep hear my voice. We know that that's true. And so we take a step in a certain direction. Maybe we just don't have the feeling we have had for our church at one time, and pretty soon we're in a whole different church. We're in a whole different circle of people. But what draws us together is our interest in this thing that's moving us. It's a very living thing. I think some people are drawn to churches out of guilt. You know, they want to be saved. They're afraid they're not going to be saved, so here's the ticket. So there's all kinds of reasons, and all the people there could very well be of the same mind. You know, that would be another example of how people travel in groups. Guilt could be the binder. Or just recovery, you know, the recovery communities. What do all those people have in common? All the people in recovery have in common, they want to recover. So that draws them together. Have they lived previous lives together? Probably not. But they certainly understand this life and what some of the challenges are in finding healing. So are there people in our life now that we've known in previous life? Do we travel in groups? It's an optional thing to believe, as far as I'm concerned. It's whether it's true or not, we certainly are drawn together out of interest. So that's the quote from my song. You and I have walked before together on some distant shore. Do we know some ancient lore together as friends? I think we probably do. Do we need to search the past to affirm the present? It should not be surprising that common interest would cause our paths to cross. And I use this particular picture because you see the streams of water all pouring into a single stream, and I kind of like that. The water, every stream has something in common, and eventually they're going to come together. You know, eventually they're going to meet, and I think that's kind of how it is with this. The question of family is also very interesting to me, because there are families that seem very close. Have you ever met families like that that are they just lock together? Others are not so close. And so that would raise the question, why would I be in a family where I'm not really relating to anybody, that not really that close to them? I think that's an interesting question. Because in life, don't we tend to choose the places where the people are most compatible with us? Aren't those the places that we tend to seek out? And then you go to your family reunion and you say, how'd I end up here? You know, not sure about this. It's kind of a funny thing. So I don't know, you know, I don't have any answers on family. I have made blanket statements that I think we choose our parents. What I think we choose is just to be here. And I'm not sure that we choose the way. We choose the actual people. So I want to incarnate. I want to have this earthly experience, and maybe I rushed my entrance. Maybe I jumped into a family that I should have read their resumes or something. I don't know. But I think that happens. That kind of thing happens. Or a body that doesn't last very long. You know, a body that dies very quickly. How do you explain all of that? Why would a person go to the challenge of incarnating in a situation like that? It just raises a lot of questions, and I don't really have an answer to all that. But I think about it, and I think we should think about it because it's a bigger context. And we need to know this, just like this COVID thing, is not our life. This is not it. This is the phase we're going through. And our life on this planet right now, same thing. We take it seriously enough to function well as we possibly can, realizing the whole time, this is not me. I'm much more than this. I'm the one floating at the ceiling looking down on this body. So in my book, The Complete Soul, I say, we are here for reasons of our choosing. And I do believe that. I absolutely believe that. We may doubt this because we have no clear memory of making such a decision. This memory is there, however, embedded in those things that truly interest and come most natural to us. And as I think about my whole spiritual journey, I started this at a very young age. And I think had I been introduced to the ideas that I picked up at age 16 or whatever, I would have responded to those at a very early age because it just felt so natural. It's just like my mother said, how do you know when you meet the right person? How do you know when you meet something that's true? You just know. That's what Emily Cady said. You just know. And so I think at any age that I would have been exposed to it, I would have responded to it in some way. But so that's compatibility. And what most interests you? When I was a little kid, I was interested in birds. I've got all kinds of bird books, you know, and I've had an interest in it then, and I'm still interested in it. But so I'm going to be drawn to certain kinds of people as a result of that. But whether we shared a previous life or not is a whole different story, but it doesn't really matter. Even when a meaningful relationship is brought to a momentary close, the opportunity to resume it will present itself at the appropriate time and place. And again, near-death research has demonstrated, at least to my satisfaction, that that is true. People do meet their loved ones that have gone on, that the relationships don't end. They may end momentarily. It may appear that a loved one is gone, but they're not. And I do believe that we reunite. I have been having a lot of dreams about my father. I'll go through periods of this. He passed several years ago. And I'll have a series of dreams about him, and he'll be just as there and just as alive as I had one last night. We were in a truck, and it was snowing. He was driving, my mother was sitting there, Beth was sitting next to me, and the windshield was suddenly covered in snow, and he finally got the windshield wipers on. I couldn't see my father, but I knew he was driving. And he was always about 35 years old. But why would you dream something like that? I don't know. And I had another dream the night before. I can't remember much about it. Same thing, but they come in spells. And is he trying to say something to me? I don't know if he is or not, but I think it does happen that way sometimes. And that's an important thing to kind of to notice. Khalil Gibran said, "A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me." That's a kind of a cool thought, I think, to hold that idea. What we recognize as precious now, we will surely know as precious then. That, to me, is what is important. We respond to people and circumstances and things because there's something in us that resonates with that and something real. And that's the important thing. That's the spiritual path.
You've been watching a talk presented by Reverend Doug Bottorff at Independent Unity here in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today, as well as those of you who joined us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to share it with those you think who might benefit from this message. If this brought value to your life, please consider donating to us on PayPal. Thanks again for watching.